Imagine the paradise of indulging yourself in your interest in culinary experimentation without the hassle of doing the dishes. A world I inhabited for one wonderful year as a postgraduate student. The three of us boys reached the agreement when renting the middle floor flat that I would do the shopping and cooking, while they would clear away the dishes and pots and pans. In the world of the mid-70s, no such luxury as a dishwasher. As a teacher training student, my time was more flexible. For my two compatriots, trainee accountants, there was work during the day and then studying for exams in the evenings. It was a Wednesday afternoon, half-day lectures, afternoon devoted to sports, as if. And on the way back home through Stranmillis, I called into the butcher's for the meat to experiment on a new recipe. As well as dishwashers, the fellas were very willing guinea pigs for new and sometimes exotic dishes. To be honest, I can't remember what actual dish I was going to try my hand at. It had been a traumatic evening previously when I had had a visitation. Like many people before me who had gone to Stranmillis for a teaching certificate, it looked as though I too might end up with a marriage certificate. And indeed, there may have been a more enjoyable bit of experimentation going on, which was beating the cooking hands down. And the rumours of this experimentation were the reason for the early evening visitation. I opened the door to find three friends from my more religious circle smiling and clasping a Bible as they asked if they could come in. Of course. Coffee orders taken, biscuits put in a plate, and we gathered in the lounge. Could we pray? There was a time of prayer and some silence as I wondered what this visit was all about. Above us, I could hear the Dutchman who rented the top flat moving around. There then followed a Bible reading about the unequal yoke of a Christian associating with an unsaved Christian. With great solemnity, there began a discussion about how marriage is a big step, the temptations of the flesh, the need for prayerful reflection. Was I going to put up with this? Or was I going to ask him to leave? And then there was a sort of divine intervention. The Dutchman lived alone, but often had, let's say, visitors. And from the bedroom above, interrupting the hushed tones of the pleas being made to me, there started a rhythmic boinging. Does God have a sense of humour? It was not only God working in mysterious ways that evening. The Dutchman was working away with increasing vigour, and there was little mystery about what was happening. Boing, boing, boing. Usually it would have been overridden by the sound of the television or some music. Boing, boing, boing. At this juncture, cups were raised to tight lips as pink tinges flowed up embarrassed cheeks to deepen into shades of red. The conversation became more stilted as the rhythm above became faster and more intense. Boing, 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 boing. Moans and silence. There was nothing else to say, really, and no one dared to raise their eyes heavenwards. I did all in my power to refrain from bursting out laughing. Thanking them for their visitation, we parted company, and then I could laugh heartily, hoping that the man above, that is, the one in the flat above, did not think it was a critique on his amorous efforts. So, having recounted the evening to my flatmates, here I was the next evening, following a recipe, adding spices here and there, and adding my own little twists, which worked most times. Happiest when experimenting with food and making a mess that I didn't have to clear up. The smells were good, the food looked tasty, and I'd also made a pudding, so result. And when the two lads arrived home, everything was demolished. As the dishes were being washed and I chatted in the doorway with them, the doorbell rang again, about the same time as the previous evening. My face blanched, and I begged the one who didn't know it then, but who would become a priest, to answer the door and say that I wasn't in. Oh, come on, God will forgive you for a little white lie to help a friend in need. And when the door opened, In barged a very irate female. Where are you boys? You were meant to be at ours for 6:30. The meal's waiting. Hell. She surveyed the dishwashing, and we mumbled something about forgetting. Sorry, we've already eaten. No excuses. Get your coats on. We've spent a lot of money in this meal, and you're going to bloody well eat it. And like the school marm she would one day become, she stood arms akimbo, while the three likely lads donned their coats sheepishly and filed out of the flat under her baleful gaze. There wasn't much conversation as we walked a few streets to where our eager hostesses were waiting, and they had gone to a lot of trouble. And while the other two girls were showing signs of some sympathy for our plight, the school marm insisted we get seated and taste their efforts. The crack was good. There was laughter aplenty, helped by the wine and seeing the funny side of the situation. But the second meal, served up with relish as they watched us suffer for our forgetfulness, was literally hard to swallow. On reflecting later that evening in our flat with stomachs groaning, it was easy to accept that the unwanted and unwelcome experiment of eating two full meals, one straight after another, was not to be repeated. Even for growing boys. We would never eat again. But then, come breakfast time, we did.